afternoon. I'll call to order the April 2nd, 2019 meeting of the Wabasha City Council, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you to everybody who's here tonight. Do we have anybody who would like to be a guest speaker? Oh, I thought for sure we would. Such a nice full house. Any public comments? Neither. All right. So we can call for any changes or additions to the agenda. I know Sue's provided us with a few. We have some consent agenda items added.
We'd like to add what's put in,
in front of council.
what's put in front of council, consent agenda. It's the updated minutes from March 5th to include the workshop notes, League of Minnesota Cities liability coverage waiver form, annual decision for the City of Wabasha Council has always opted to not waive the monetary limits on the municipal tort liability established by Minnesota Statute 466.04. We'll need a motion to not waive the monetary limits on municipal tort liability, which is recommended. We have a Minnesota lawful gambling application for exempt permit submitted by St. Felix for a raffle to be held at the Coffee Mill Golf Course on May 11th, 2019. Some warrants we'd like to add: League of Minnesota Cities Workers' Comp invoice for $70,855. Invoice from Abdu Ike and Myers for $5,350. And then for FSS Solutions for $250. That's our annual fee, and that's the firm that we use for random drug testing.
Any questions? All right. I'll try to keep a mayor's presentation short. We have a lot of content on the agenda, but it's been a wild month, especially for those involved in managing water, and I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about that from our departments. I just wanted to express appreciation on behalf of the city, but certainly on behalf of our community and everyone who lives here, to our fire service, our EMS, and our public works team, our wastewater treatment. I asked the question at my dinner table tonight about something you might be grateful for that you don't think about very often, and wastewater treatment was the first thing that came to mind for me. To our city hall staff, I know it's been busy handling questions and needs of the citizens, and to our county staff, and a special thanks to the 8th grade and 12th grade WK students and their teachers that volunteered to do some heavy lifting and fill sandbags for the community's use. That's really appreciated. I think I understand that they initiated that. That wasn't a,
yes,
we didn't ask for that, and that's even better. So that's really wonderful. And then I'll just say that over the last month, I've seen some interesting synergies developing with a lot of involvement of members of council, but also some of our public works staff. There's a lot of exciting things happening related to the Wabasha's bike walk advocacy. And so there's some community organizing going on there. The statewide health improvement partnerships based in Wabasha County have been a tremendous help with getting our bike walk advocates aligned with one another. And the community gardens also. I just didn't appreciate how much Mickey Nelson contributed to the productivity of the second community garden. And I'll give a little PSA that there are still plots available for that, and we'll put some messages out on Facebook soon for anyone who's interested. But Mickey was gardening a large portion of that second garden, and the gleanings were going to the Wabasha food shelf. And that was very appreciated, and they would like to see that continue. So we're going to try to, in Mickey's honor, keep that going. That's really important to the recipients of the Wabasha area food shelf to receive that fresh produce in the summertime. And it's a lot of work to get that produce to the point that it's harvestable. So again, I don't have solid details there, but there's members of the community that are going to help make that initiative keep going. And then some very early conversations on childcare. Chad and I were approached by St. Elizabeth's, and I think other employers are feeling this as well. Childcare is a real critical issue across the region and the state, and probably the nation, at least as evidenced by the policy recommendations by the Southeast Minnesota League of Municipalities. So we're going to try to get a better understanding of what's going on locally, and then think about positioning ourselves for problem solving with regards to childcare. And I noted that it was interesting to me, the mayor's conference, which takes place in Stillwater this year, that childcare is actually a session. in that mayor's conference. So while it maybe wasn't an issue that's on the radar of cities, it's probably about to become one. So that's all for me. Do we have committee reports? Can I call on Tim from planning?
So we did approve an IUP for sand and gravel and Rochester sand and gravel for blacktop plant, which I think we're talking about today, as well as approve the preliminary plot of the bayou, which we will also
See
talk
tonight.
about today. So, and then we still have just 2 openings still on that commission. So, if anybody wants to join, let us know.
Great, yes, thank you for making that announcement for me. Utilities, any updates for us?
Yeah, we've been discussing water rates the last couple meetings. So we did review the budget and budget projections last meeting, and we decided that we would present a 5% increase to water rates this year. Just to give everybody some perspective of what that means. If we go through with a 5% increase on just the water portion of your whole bill, it would be 13 cents per 1,000 gallons of water used. So the average Wabasha citizen uses 3,000 gallons per month. So your invoice would increase by 39 cents per month.
We'll talk more about
And
that.
that is in the consent agenda for first reading.
And Port Authority, John.
Port Authority met on the 19th, Tuesday. That's the third Tuesday of the month, 7 o'clock here. Really one item on the agenda, and that was a discussion with CEDA. CEDA is an organization, it's a Community and Economic Development Associates. It's an organization here in southeast Minnesota that helps communities like ours work through maybe some economic development strategies and things like that. And kind of as a spin-off from our workshop that we had as joint Port Authority and Council, their representative came and talked to us about a comprehensive economic plan for downtown. We heard a lot, I think we ingested a lot. We didn't make any decisions about it, and I think we'll be moving forward with trying to shape that a little differently and talk more about it as we go. And that was it.
I don't believe Parks met. Tony's
Nope,
not here, is he?
They did not.
Okay.
Parks did not meet, and Streets did not have a quorum this morning, but
Okay.
Jean?
Evening, Council, Mayor. Start out with, just got news not too long ago that Amanda Murphy, our Assistant Director, will be resigning on May 21st, and she will be moving back to Sheridan, Wyoming to, with her family. So we're in search right now for an Assistant Director, and it's going pretty well. We've got 2 applicants currently, and we're not looking to close this until probably towards the end of April, maybe even into the first week of May. So, but that'll give us enough time to get somebody in, get them trained, and get them going on what we need to do. Runs for the year so far, 141 calls of service. We've had 96 911s and 29 transfers. I don't have those numbers completely broke down, but we're on track just like last year, same amount as last year. So. A couple of things, I've had some meetings with the hospital with St. Elizabeth's out there. Some good meetings. We've got a case review coming up. The first one that St. Elizabeth's has to offer. And then we're gonna be working with a mock crash probably this October, September, October, with PD and St. Elizabeth's Fire and Ambulance. So it's in its early stages right now, it's in planning. So, and then, let's see here. We'll be doing some training with the city pool this year. I do believe you guys have a director for that now.
And the consent agenda for tonight.
Is it? Okay, good. So if it's the same person I'm thinking of, then they've already reached out to me. So we're gonna be doing training the week before the pool opens with the lifeguards, because I guess there's a new pool of lifeguards that are starting over there this year. So May 3rd and 4th, everybody knows that's garage sale weekend. Come down and see us down at the ambulance station. We're gonna have the brat stand open that day, both days actually. So those old devices, they're in place. I'm talking about that. And then we also just got done doing the recertifications of what was it, 7 or 8, Tim?
Yeah, I think
seven or eight EMTs. So we are all fully licensed again. Those EMTs recertified, and we're good to go for another year. So, and then the next round comes through. So, any questions? Thank you.
Gene. And we need to hear from Darren. Probably has a lot to share.
All right, I guess I'm just here to give a quick report or whatever on the flood and where things are at and where we're at. We had a crest day at 4:45, so the good news is things are starting to go down. Of course, we met 3 days a week. We met Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as a city, as all department heads, and we were able to stay on top, I think, a lot of this high water. So I think the outlook for the city and for ourselves was dodged a bullet pretty much by the weather, and we got lucky. So we're going to keep an eye on things for the next couple weeks. Go out and take some pictures tomorrow, putting together some information for future floods, I should say, and some planning that we can do after this and going from there. So it's kind of where I'm at. I don't have a whole lot to talk about because things are going down, so that's a good thing. Any questions for me?
Good news kind of
All
day.
right. Thanks.
I think I got everybody. All right, and we'll have the administrator's report. Chad.
One of the big things, and we just ironed it out today and got a meeting set with the Army Corps. We're having a pre-meeting next Monday morning here at City Hall with the Wabasha team and the Coners, and our legal advice as well. And our meeting is set for April 19th here in Wabasha from 8:30 to 12:30. So if any other council people want to attend, we got to be careful about it. Talking if we have a quorum, but Craig, you're a part of that group and you responded, but it's here in Wabasha, which is nice. They'll have a full contingent down here, and again, this will be to talk about the plan that we submitted to them. They've gotten a lot of feedback from Washington on that, so we're good to go there. We have a contract with the county that we are finalizing for that LRIP grant that we got, where the county becomes our fiscal agent for the couple of streets, the 12th Street and 8th Street. So when we get into that, Brian and I looked at the contract last week. I don't think we had anything to add there, so we'll get that done. Other than that, it's been water. Dealing with the flood and working with Darren and his team and the rest of the department heads. So.
Okay, what's the reason the county has to be the fiscal agent?
It has to.
It's state money from MnDOT, and MnDOT doesn't have a method of giving that money to you as a city. They need to run it through the county as your sponsor. It's kind of typical for that type of thing.
All right.
Yep,
Anything
we're
further?
good.
All right. So we have a consent agenda. We have the items that Chad described, and then we have, as was mentioned, approval for first reading, I'm jumping the gun here. Approval for hiring a pool director for the 2019 season, Kelly Quaid, for a salary of $10,186, and this is a 4% increase over 2018. So we would have a motion to approve hiring Kelly Quaid as the pool director for 2019 at that salary. We have, as Brian mentioned, the Utilities Commission meeting on March 18th for their regular meeting, discuss possible water rates, proposing a 5% increase in just the water usage, no other increases proposed. And we would have the warrants, which include a couple additions, as was mentioned at the top of the meeting.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Very good. All in favor?
I,
Opposed, same sign.
Can I just bring up
Yes.
that the warrants that were done in the department way is a lot better than,
You like that?
This way,
So that was
so-
requested.
yeah. So if we can go forward with that, that'd be great. It was
Good suggestion. I think Craig had asked for that, or
Yep,
you would, maybe
yep.
you would ask for
Craig
that.
did, yeah.
Yeah, great, great, great. Easier to read, says there's lots to read. All right, and we have no public hearing. In our general business, we have the audit presentation by Mr. Andy Berg of Abdo Eichen Meyer with us tonight. Welcome, Andy.
Good evening. I believe you guys should have a document like this. This is what I'll walk through tonight. When I'm done, I'll be happy to take any questions on the information I covered, or if you have questions on the actual financial statements. So turning to the first page, we do list the audit team that worked on your audit. I'm Andy Berg, as you mentioned, the partner on the audit. Justin was the audit manager. We had 2 staff, Tyler and Alex, and then Tommy's our administrative assistant that puts all the reports together back in the office. So on page 3, this is kind of the items I'll cover. I'll cover what our audit opinion was. I'll go into the general fund results. I'll cover all the other funds of the city too, including your governmental funds and your enterprise funds, and then look at some ratios within the city, and that gives a peer group comparison to other cities in the state and also the county too. So starting with the audit results on page 4, the end result is that we issue an opinion on your financial statements. We issued an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion, so the best opinion you can get. Also, as part of the audit, we test 7 different areas of Minnesota legal compliance and issue a report on that. No findings to report there. So happy to report that the audit went well and smoothly and good results from an audit opinion standpoint. As part of the audit, we do gain an understanding of the city's internal controls. We don't test the controls or give an opinion on the effectiveness of the internal controls. On page 5, there is one finding that we report that's been in there for a number of different years and very common in small to medium-sized organizations. Since we're doing the audit and preparing the financial statements, we report that as a internal control finding. There's different levels of findings. It's not reported at the highest finding due to the city staff does review the financial statements prior to them being finalized. Now jumping into the financial information, starting with the general fund on page 6, we give you a 5-year history of your ending fund balance. Here we're looking at the unassigned portion of the fund balance, which is a green line. That ended at about $2.2 million. If we look at that compared to your next year's budget, so the red line in 2018 is about 77% of your 2019 budget, which decreased a little bit from 2017, partially because the unassigned fund balance went down and your budget went up, so it was a combination of those. So you can see over the 5-year period, you range from anywhere from the 77% in 2018, you're at a high of 97.5% in 2016. You do have a policy where you want to maintain that. The minimum amount would be 40%, which is indicated by the blue line there. Now, if we look at the activity in the general fund and how you got to that ending general fund balance, on page 7, we give you a comparison of your budget to actual results. So your total revenue, that first row there, came in at just under $2.6 million, relatively close to your budget as a percentage, so under budget by about $28,000. Your total expenditures came in at just under $2.8 million, about $92,000 higher than budget. The public safety department was the largest area that had the biggest variances over budget. Your capital outlay budget was under budget. So the total net revenue expenditure budget variance was about $121,000. So revenues under expenses by about $151,000. You had transfers in of $55,000 from your water and sewer fund. You also transferred out $125,000 to your capital improvement fund. So total fund balance decreased $221,000, ending at $2.36 million. So when we're looking at the unassigned fund balance, that makes up about $2.2 million of it. So you have the difference is a non-spendable portion with the biggest piece, interfund loan of $143,000 that your TIF district is paying back, and we'll look at that fund on a future slide. Page 8 is the general fund revenues over a 3-year period by source, so you can kind of get an idea of where the revenue's coming in from. You can see the first set of columns there are your property taxes, the main revenue source in your general fund, fairly consistent over the 3 years presented. The next area is your intergovernmental. very consistent. The majority of that's your local government aid, which made up about 600,000 in 2018. And then you have your charges for service, again, fairly consistent over the 3 years there, with the biggest portion of that related to public safety charges for service at about 391,000. Similar graph on page 9, but with the general fund expenditures by type. Again, giving you a 3-year comparison. The first set there, your general government, real consistent from 2017 to 2018. Public safety has increased each of the 3 years. That's your largest area of spending, which is made up of your police, fire, building inspection, and ambulance. Public works, the next set of columns, consistent expenditures from 2017 to 2018. And then the remainder, capital outlay, transfers out, and some miscellaneous other expenditures. Now moving on to the governmental funds, starting with the capital project funds on page 10. You do have 2 capital project funds, your main capital improvement fund, and then you have the mill property TIF fund. The mill property TIF fund is a fund that has an interfund loan with the general fund of $143,000. You can see that progress was made on that in 2018. The total deficit fund balance improved by about $100,000, which reduced that interfund loan in 2018. Your capital improvement fund at a total ending fund balance of about $866,000, which was a decrease of about $47,000. So this is a fund where you transferred in from the general fund that $125,000. Now the graph there just gives you a 3-year history of the fund balance of those funds by category. So the assigned portion is really the capital project or the capital improvement fund that you've internally assigned and tied to your capital improvement program. There you can see the fund balance has decreased from 2016 to 2018. And then the unassigned, which is a deficit, that's your TIF fund. You can see you've made progress on paying back that interfund loan over the 3 years. The next set of funds on page 11 are your special revenue funds. You have 3 funds here. You have your Port Authority, library, and then your special police fund. These funds are restricted for specific purposes for each fund. You can see the Port Authority is the largest of them, with about $462,000 of ending fund balance at the end of the year, which was an increase of $32,000, with the library and special police fund remaining fairly consistent. You do have one debt service fund. Or one outstanding bond. You have 2 debt service funds. You have the GeoTIF bond, which that debt has matured. You have about $55,000 of remaining assets in that fund. Your Geo Improvement Bond, which was done in 2013, has about just over $2.5 million in bonds outstanding at the end of the year. This is mainly being paid back with property taxes, with some special assessments also helping with the debt service requirements. At the end of the year, you had about $882,000 of assets in there, which about $703,000 was cash. And then the graph there just gives you the principal and interest requirements through the end of the bond. So right around that $450,000 you're paying in principal and interest each year. The next 2 funds are your enterprise funds, your water and sewer funds. So with both of these funds, we give you a 4-year history of the cash flow from operation, which will be the top graph, and then a cash balance graph. So with the water fund on page 13, pointed out in that top graph, the cash from operations, you can see the blue is the receipts, the money coming in, the gray is your operating disbursements, and then the green is your debt service. So you can see each of the last 3 years, you have generated cash from operations, with that blue being higher than the operating disbursements and debt service. The 2018 receipts did increase from 17, mainly due to rate increase and also an increase in usage. So with that cash generated from operations, you have been able to bring that cash deficit up to about $86,000 at the end of 2018. You do still have a interfund loan payable to the sewer fund of about $210,000 at the end of the year too. So now looking at the sewer fund, like the water fund, You have generated cash from operations and each of the 4 years presented there. Again, with the blue bar, which is the receipts being higher than the operating disbursements and debt service. The cash balance did increase in 2018 up to 781,000. In addition to that, you do have that 210,000 receivable from the water fund that I mentioned on the previous slide.
What happened to 2017?
I think that's a typo in the years, so it should be 2015, 16, and 17. Sorry about that. Page 15 is a 3-year picture of your total cash and investment balances. So this covers all the different funds and their color codes. So we covered each of these funds so that, for example, the bottom part of that bar, the dark blue, is your general fund, the piece of the total cash and investments. The red's your capital project, the green's your special revenue, the debt service is a purple, the enterprise is the light blue, so your water and sewer, and then the Port Authority is orange. So over the 3 years, fairly consistent with a little bit of a decrease in total cash from 2016. In 2018, you had about 5.18 million, 2017, about 5.17 million, and 2016, about 5.64 million. So it kind of gives you an idea of your total cash that you have, cash and investments, broken down by the different funds of the city. Now moving on to some of the ratios. For each of these, we give you a 4-year history of the city and then the previous 3 years of the peer group comparison. So the peer group comparisons, the gray indicates all the cities in Wabasha County. The green are other cities throughout the whole state with similar population. So I'm not going to cover each of these graphs. I'll touch on a couple of them. So on page 16, the bottom one there, the taxes per capita, you can see fairly consistent with a decrease from 2016 to 2017. So you do have a higher taxes per capita than both the peer groups, but did decrease from 2015 and 16 down in 2017 and 18. On page 17, the top graph there is your debt per capita. So there you can see you haven't issued any new debt over the past 4 years since 2013, so that your trend line there, the blue line, has been going down, so decreasing the total debt. Page 18, here we're looking at the governmental fund current expenditures and capital expenditures, so it can kind of give you a trend of where you're at and in comparison to the peer group. So the top one is looking at just the current expenditures. You can see the blue bar there, you know, the trend there increasing a little bit over each of the 4 years presented. At about 1,154 at the end of 2018 compared to 964 in 2015. The bottom graph there is the capital expenditures. That one you will see fluctuate more. That depends on the type of projects you have going on during the year. So you can see back in 2016, that blue bar was higher, so you had a few more projects going on compared to 2018. Page 19 just gives you some information on expenditures by program and revenues by source. We looked at this in the general fund. This gives you just a comparison to some of the peer groups too. Page 20 is looking at your debt service coverage in your water and sewer funds. So kind of looking at that cash flow generated from operations. So both of those, we saw that the cash generated from operations was covering the debt service. So you'll see your percentage is above 100%. Anything below 100% would give you an indication that you weren't generating enough cash to cover your debt service. So you would be either dipping into reserves or need other sources to cover that debt service. So in both these cases, you're generating enough cash to cover your debt service requirements, your principal and interest. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you may have on that information or the actual financial statements.
Thank you, Andy. Any questions from council? All right. We don't require a resolution We just have our, do we? We just make a motion to approve it, yeah. So we can entertain a motion to approve this audit report if there's no further questions for
I so move.
presenter.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I,
Opposed, same sign. Audit is approved. Thank you very
All
much
right,
for the
thank
I
you
like
very
the
much.
work,
slides,
and this
Andy.
presentation is very helpful. Yes,
Thank
very
you.
helpful.
That worked out well.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you
Thank you
very
for
much.
being here.
Have a safe trip.
Yeah. All right, we have our street utility. Let me get to my pages here. Street utility project, we have Brian here with us to describe that. Project schedule.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We have a couple of resolutions related to this project tonight for you to consider. One would be a resolution declaring the amount to be assessed and calling, and ordering preparation of the assessment roll. And the other resolution is calling for the hearing on the proposed assessment. Where we're at on the schedule, in your packet, there is a detailed schedule for the project. So at this meeting, we're doing the assessment process, getting ready to hold the assessment hearing at your May 7th, 2019 meeting. Bids on the project will be taken on April 17th. We do have a preliminary assessment roll, and the resolution declaring the amount to be assessed is based on the preliminary assessment roll. Once bids are taken, we will reevaluate those assessments and present a revised assessment roll if necessary at the assessment hearing for you to consider. There are a couple of issues on the assessment that we'd like some assessment roll that we'd like some direction from council on. First, just to note, on the assessment roll, there are several properties that were assessed on the 2013 project. And according to your local improvement policy, because that project happened within the window of the assessment term, those properties would not be assessed as a part of this project. So even though they are listed on the roll, they've been notified of the project and sent all the appropriate notices. According to your policy, those assessments would not be certified because they were assessed on the previous project. So those parcels are highlighted in gray.
What was the previous project? Was it?
The 2013 street and utility improvement project.
So
That
are,
was
we- are you saying we're going back and repaving what we paved in 2013?
They're corner lots.
Properties with both.
Yeah, they're corner lots. Couple other issues. One is there is a cemetery on the project, and just after researching some of the statutes, discussing with Attorney Flaherty, talking with the cemetery and staff, our recommendation would be to eliminate the cemetery from the assessment roll on the project, just based on it being a tax-exempt property. Those are the couple issues we'd like just confirmation from council on. And if council confirms that, we'll include that in the final assessment roll preparation. From a construction standpoint, we would expect the project to begin construction later in the year, possibly in August, and would be complete by the end of October. The reason for the late construction just has to do with the other projects that are going on in town, the Highway 61 improvements with the reduced conflict intersections and the paving, and also the Highway 60 project as well. So we think that'll time out better with contractor availability and just general construction work happening in town. There is a detour associated with the Highway 61 project. MnDOT is planning to detour Highway 61 traffic along Commerce Drive and 10th Street, which is actually on our project. So that's the other reason we're looking at this particular schedule after starting in August, because they will be done with the detour on 10th at that time. So we can go in and do the improvements along 10th Street. Any questions?
I have a question on the 501c3 thing, the cemeteries and so forth. At our last one, we had two churches that weren't exempt. What's the difference?
Cemeteries are specifically identified in the statute for some reason.
Okay.
And I don't know why, but we we looked at it and they're specifically identified, and if they're a nonprofit cemetery, a not-for-profit cemetery, and there are for-profit cemeteries out there, they're exempt. And also based on past history too, it sounds like you've previously had a project along adjacent to the cemetery and they were not assessed at that time either, so it would be consistent with past practice.
Thanks, that's helpful. We have an action for consideration. Would entertain a motion to approve the resolution declaring the cost to be assessed and ordering preparation of the assessment, and approve the elimination of the parcels that received an assessment for the 2013 improvement project, and if council agrees, elimination of the cemetery assessment, and I think this, these 2013 improvement project properties.
I'll make a motion for that.
Thank you, Dean.
I'll second.
I'm not sure who was first there. We'll say Woodley.
I'll take it.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. You have an approved resolution.
The other resolution would be calling for the hearing on the proposed assessment.
Thank you, yeah. And that hearing date, just remind me, just
The hearing time is highlighted in the resolution, just
got it.
confirming that you would want to hold the
Just
hearing
looking
at
on
the
the
beginning of the
schedule.
meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Dean, thank you.
Gotta catch up on it.
Yeah. We have a motion,
I'll second that.
and we have a second. Any further discussion on the hearing date? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right.
I would also note that on the schedule, we are planning to wait to send the notices to the parcels until after the bid opening, so when we send that out, it'll have the correct assessment amount. If it does go down based on the bids, they would receive the correct assessment amount in their notice, so.
All right. Thank you. Very good. All right, we have the major traffic generator waiver application for Rochester Sand and Gravel. Want to describe that too, Brian? Sound good?
So this is actually somewhat related to the construction that we were just talking about with not only the Highway 61 project and the Trunk Highway 60 project and the city project. So Rochester Sand and Gravel has applied for a major traffic generator waiver application. So if you recall, you have this major traffic generator ordinance, which the intent of the ordinance is to identify basically projects or businesses or implementations that generate significant traffic. The ordinance requires them to prepare a traffic impact study that would help you identify what impacts that increased traffic might have on your roadway system, and whether any improvements or changes need to be made as a part of the issuance of a conditional use permit. A few years ago, you implemented this waiver provision in the ordinance that would allow you to waive the traffic impact study and the conditional use permit for projects that met certain criteria. So Rochester Sand and Gravel has applied for that waiver. The recommendation from staff is to grant the waiver with the condition that the city of Wabasha can temporarily suspend trucks due to safety concerns, if any arise, due to that hauling. And then Rochester Sand and Gravel would have to get a driveway permit from Wabasha County for the access from County Highway 30. So where they're locating this is in the gravel pit that is actually at the other end where the Corps of Engineers sand has been hauled to. So you've already had projects in the past where trucks have been hauling sand across Highway 61 to this pit. So trucks from this mobile asphalt plant would be hauling asphalt from that pit to the Highway 61 project, to the Highway 60 project, and potentially if Rochester Sand and Gravel is a successful bidder on your project, they would be hauling asphalt to your city project later on this year, depending on the results of the bid.
Maybe the county project? too?
And the county project as well, yes. Yep, the County Road 59 project in North End for the reroute. Any questions?
I'll make motion on that one too.
Very good. We have a motion to approve the major traffic generator waiver. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Very good. Thank you, Brian.
I'll send
We
an
have
email
the-
of what we talked about.
Preliminary Bayou addition plat review coming from the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Mayor, I'm gonna abstain from discussion and voting. My firm did the work for this.
Okay, sounds good. Tim, do you want to describe the planning approach to this a little bit? Kind of any,
Yeah, so we discussed the preliminary plat at our last planning commission meeting. No comments from the public were generated at that meeting. Probably, we discussed a number of, not issues, but things. And if you look on the last page of your, of the staff notes, so really from the recommendation from planning, there was 4 major recommendations. Walnut Avenue, which right now, I think, yep, they relabeled it. So Prospect will go up the hill and then technically take a little veer to the right, which will technically go into Walnut, which then goes to a left back into Prospect. So there was issue about Walnut and the width of that Walnut Avenue, and we approved it, noting that we probably discuss it here. There is gonna be a path in Stormwater Pond, towards Highway 60, which we did approve, and we did get a, discussion with the Corps. If you see outlot number B, I think it is, just, what would that be, south of that or west of that, there's gonna be an area that they're gonna use for drainage as well, and the Corps was acceptable to that plan. The sidewalk bike path, we approved that they're gonna put in. The only talking point on that was future drawing that into Prospect going up the hill, maybe tie that into, County Road 30, as well, so we need to discuss that. I'm not totally sure the sidewalk bike path has to be put in right away with that, but when we redo that road, when and if, we should consider putting the bike path into that, just to tie it in with the Bayou land as well, which then would go all the way over to 60 and 12th Street. And that's basically, and then we had some discussion about the intersection of Prospect and 60. I know it looks like, and this is, from my understanding, Craig, correct me, it's as good as we're gonna get the directness of it. We know we can't tie it into 12th Street straight across, just due to the flood stage area. So I believe MnDOT approved this, and this was ultimately approved at the Planning Commission, but we had a lot of discussion on that. So I don't know if you wanted to follow up with that at all, but.
Yeah, there was a little bit of concern on that end, is that we were gonna set up a jog, there. And it's hard to see on site plan 2. We had another drawing with a little bit more, detail on what's available, or what's exists on the 12th Street. And it looked like it shouldn't be a problem there. One of the things that we did find was, on site plan 1, where the existing Prospect Avenue joins the proposed Walnut Avenue. There wasn't any detail as how those 2 streets are gonna connect in there. And then we probably have a 15-foot wide Prospect Avenue that exists right now, which is gonna tie into a 36-foot wide Walnut. So there's a little bit of work, we think, that needs to be done to try and make that transition. And we also talked about, well, should we just do a transition, or will we need to widen Prospect Avenue and also extend the pedestrian bike path down to Hiawatha Drive? So.
We talked a little bit today about it, Brian Malm, myself, Tony, and Pat. And it doesn't need to be decided today with the preliminary plat. What'll happen next is they'll move into a development agreement where we can spell out certain things to allow this whole process to go forward. But the question or I guess the thing to keep in mind is we do have to deal with that if we're gonna try to transition it or leave it as it is. I believe it was our thought, just chatting today, for the hour meeting that we had, was we would probably recommend from staff's perspective to bring that street up to our standard street width, so it would tie directly into Prospect, by following our current, what's? Local improvement policy, so assessing 20% of the cost to the adjacent property owners, with the city, bearing the rest of that, so, that was a thought at this point.
And that's my concern also, is that, makes no sense putting a new road in and having it narrow to an old road. We might as well, it's 550 feet, something like that. We might as well,
Something, yeah.
fix it up, do it right, and have the sidewalk go from Hiawatha through the development, connected to 60. Otherwise it makes, why even put a sidewalk in?
Our discussion was, it's the city's responsibility to have a safe roadway to
Right.
tax-paying properties and.
In our new development, I believe in our development policy, it says that there shall be sidewalks now, new developments. But what I saw here, a month ago or whenever this came out, was that there's no connecting sidewalks on either side. So, and that makes absolutely no sense to me. And whether that be at our cost or partnership of the developer, city, or whoever, I think it's crucial that we get it done when this goes in.
Well, we're working with the county who's planning a sidewalk along Hiawatha Drive
Right.
in the next few years.
So we could tie in when we
So
redo.
we'll tie into that really well.
Well, right, yeah, we would tie into Lawrence, the railroad bridge sidewalk, the Super Value sidewalk, let's just call it that.
Yeah, okay.
And then, the Bayou sidewalk, and, we have plans of future pathways going through the slough. Well, now we're bringing this access up over a hill where it's never gonna flood, and possibly connect 12th Street and through, the properties behind the jail and the Eagle Basin, so, it just gets us one step closer also to that loop, so, so I think we need to look at that, so. I'm for the development, 13 new parcels in town, great, so, but let's do it right.
Yeah, I will mention that we did talk about potentially, if we didn't want to widen Walnut, to put a cul-de-sac in, which nobody on the commission wanted, to put
Cul-de-sac
that
to
in.
nowhere.
So, yeah, absolutely, it just didn't seem right. So we were all in favor of working with the city and the developer to improve that road as much as we possibly can.
And I would agree with that too, doesn't make sense to put a culvert, cul-de-sac in that area. That's one resident back in there, yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat for the Bayou addition.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Tim, I heard first. Do we have any further discussion? Thank you for that informative background. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
I'll abstain.
All right, so we have an
I was
abstention.
reading, I'm sorry, aye.
Quiet eye. Very good, okay. Great. And for some reason, my next item didn't print for me here. We have the Marina franchise agreement update. John or Chad or Jeff? Any background you want to provide?
When we start, why don't we start with our attorney? That might be our best spot to start? No, I guess I'll start. That's fine.
Yeah.
So we've been in negotiation with Parkside Marina for a number of months with respect to the franchise agreement that expired last year. We've been back and forth with several terms and conditions between Parkside Marina and the city, of which you guys have been kind of updated. We did one presentation for sure, and then we had some discussion, I believe, in a closed session as well. So where we're at today is that there was a document that was produced and it was sent out as proprietary to us. Mike, is that kind of the right way to say it?
It's a privileged,
Yeah.
it's a privileged attorney-client privileged and
So, and with that kind of spells out some of the information that we had and that we used. I think where the committee is where we're at, is that our last offer to them really should be kind of our final offer. What they've responded to us with, and I'm not gonna get the percentages right, but it's considerably less by, $10,000 a year, and then goes from there. So, what we're recommending tonight is some kind of an action be taken to, move the proceeding on, to the next step. And that's either giving notice to them that we're gonna start, notice to them that they're in arrears and no longer has a binding agreement with the city. And, we're willing to continue to negotiate for a period of time, maybe a week or two. But after that, move into an eviction process or something to that effect. Did I hit everything?
I think you did.
Chad?
Just to confirm, we did send out the summary
Yes.
of every offer and counteroffer that went back and forth. And the last two were the ones that, one was from Parkside to us, and then we responded with the little thing that's titled Final City of Wabasha Offer 3/22/19. And these were just the negotiating points. There's obviously other terms and conditions that would go into the franchise agreement, but
Right.
that's, those were the points of consideration that we took.
I have one question real quick.
Yes,
Terry,
sir.
you done?
What's that?
Were you done?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I was asked, and I don't know if, I suppose it's appropriate to ask this. I was asked, have we been in contact with the other marina to see if they were interested in putting docks and leasing that property?
No, we've been solely negotiating with the current owners.
Maybe that's an option. I don't know. So,
Any other questions or comments?
You also received the, as Attorney Flaherty noted, the privilege document that kind of states the two recommended two options that we discussed
So Chad, can I jump
to
in?
put forward. Go ahead.
Real quick, sorry. So just so we're clear, the options, I just wanted to outline the eviction, the status, the legal status of their tenancy at this point, and how to evict them, if that's what you choose. But I think the key word is if. I mean, it needs to be a threshold decision if that's what you want to do. So if you want to do that, then those are the kind of two basic ways that I saw about going about doing that. There might be more ways, or you could add anything into an eviction notice you wanted to, but that's if you choose to go down that path. I wanted to, or Chad asked me to, and I wanted to just outline what the legal status is at this point. They are a holdover tenant at this point, and that's, by statute, you can evict them if you want to do that. And that's, but that would require a notice. I mean, there definitely has to be notice to evict. You can't just tell them to get out tomorrow, and I wanted to outline that for you. So if that's what you choose to do, and I can answer questions about it.
I mean, as the city attorney, what other options do we have? I mean, this can't continue to go on like this. It's absurd. This has to be settled one way or another. I mean, what are our other options?
Yeah, maybe Chad can touch on it. I think you can keep negotiating, at some point.
Time bound.
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point, if you want to pursue eviction, you have to do a notice, is the bottom line. So the question is that today or is that not today, I think, is a kind of a threshold matter that has to be decided, before we can move forward. And if you want to do that, what do you want me to, as this kind of outlined there, what kind of dates do you want to give? And, you know, how do you wanna direct us to move forward with that, would be the issue.
Just wanted to reiterate, we can't vote today on any kind of agreement, so the public will have a chance to give input if an agreement is reached. So this isn't the final end-all decision on a lease tonight. I guess in terms of the negotiation, I feel like we've gone as far as we can go. I don't think we should go down any more than our last offer that you guys have done. So at this point, I would love to just solve this and not have to do any kind of letter or eviction notice, but I definitely want negotiations to continue, but I think we can do this option 2 that's been outlined to us and keep the negotiation going, with hopes that we wouldn't have to commence eviction, but at least the ball can get rolling if we do pick option 2. And yeah, I would just hope that we can solve it, because that's the last thing I want to see happen is for the marina to not operate.
So I can just jump in real quick, to clarify something you just said. Your charter, the city charter requires a public hearing and notice of a public hearing prior to any agreement. So obviously that can't happen tonight. It would be, if you had an agreement, at least 1 month, you know, next meeting, and possibly longer, because we haven't negotiated an agreement yet.
Right. It'll be a process.
So that, it will take some time, so that's why, and there is a process and a public opportunity to be heard, and you'd have, and that would be true of any operator, of any franchise that you're required to give under your charter.
I think it's a 10-day notice of a public hearing.
Which is the normal notice, but I mean, you only have 1 meeting a month, so I think, yeah.
And that would be if we entered into if we negotiated, agreed upon terms and conditions of a new agreement.
Right.
You know, right now, because there isn't an agreement, we don't need a public hearing or anything to take action tonight to move to the next step.
I don't see so, no.
Yeah.
And more to the point, you know, even if you had a public hearing and you adopt a franchise ordinance, you have to do this by ordinance, there's no guarantee the operators will sign it, you know?
Right, yeah, right, absolutely.
I guess I'd just ask, does anyone see going lower than the last offer? Does anyone feel like they want to negotiate any
No, I think we
lower
paid
than what's been
$7,500. We got a professional,
Appraisal?
appraisal. And, I've seen a number of appraisals in my day, and that looked like a pretty good appraisal to me. You can always find somebody else to give you a different number, but then if they want that, they would have to pony up for that appraisal. But I think we have a professional appraisal. We paid $7,500 for it. We not only appraised our property, we also appraised their property, so they got a free appraisal out of it. So it's quite a benefit. And I think that number is fixed, that the appraisals gave, and I think it's a pretty firm number, and I think that our offer here, the last and final offer, is pretty close to that. So I think it's a good, I think our offer is a good final offer. And I don't think we really can't retreat too far from that professional appraisal.
Does anybody have any clarity on action that we'd like to see?
I think we need to pursue option 2. Set a firm date for negotiations to continue and end, and then at that point, we can't keep this can't just keep going on and on and on. I mean, they're basically are operating a business on property we own without paying for it. You can't run a slip down them from without paying for it.
I agree with Jeff and Craig, so.
Right. Suppose we could use a motion to pursue that.
I have one question. On
Yeah,
option
please.
2, number 1, is that the correct date?
No, it's not, it's twenty
Okay.
eighteen.
I just wanna make sure.
There's two typos.
Okay.
The other typo was
Same
also,
one.
was also a date.
Okay, I
and that-
just wanted to clarify.
Just so everybody's clear, we did an extension and Tim wasn't on the council, so there was an extension. The original agreement was a 10-year agreement. It had lapsed. There was no agreement. They were holdover tenants. And then council entered into an extension agreement that went until September 30th. And my memo says November 1st. It actually began, the holdover tenancy began on October 1st. So that was two typos, but good catch.
So are you thinking, the 30-day notice would be like on the 30th of April? That would be that's 1, 2, 3, it would be the 23rd then, wouldn't it? Upon receipt of the 30-day notice, or it would be like upon receipt of the letter? It would be 30 days from receipt of the letter, or how
Well-
would you do that?
In the bullet point number 4, it says insert a date. I think you should just pick a date.
Pick a date?
I'd be comfortable with April 30th.
April 30th? And do we want to give ourselves to the middle of the month for negotiations? Is that reasonable, you think?
You would think it should be after all this time,
Right?
be honest.
Chad, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Do we want to do, Mike recommends 30 days for number 4. That'd be just shy of that. If we're still comfortable with April 30th.
We can pick any date. Well, yeah, you're right. So, but I heard the 30th.
Oh, we should go at least 30.
Yeah, we should go at least
I
30.
wasn't doing the math right in my head there. We should go at least 30.
Keep in mind, it's gonna take time. If there is an agreement in principle, it's gonna take time to draft this.
Right.
Yeah.
And then send it to them to review
Still
it.
get it approved.
Should be 30 on receipt of the letter, so
Okay.
we should pick something close to that, I guess. Maybe a week out from today,
Or maybe the
plus 30 days.
15th.
Take
So
some time
15th
to
of May?
craft
May
the letter.
15th.
Roughly?
That give you time, Mike, to craft the letter?
Well, I'll do the letter immediately.
Okay. I just
tomorrow.
did, okay.
But, then you gotta mail the letter, and then you gotta, and there's notice provisions in the franchise which aren't valid anymore because it's expired, but they're still, we're gonna follow
Yep.
those rules. And so you'd wanna give, I think May 15th is fine, and then, you probably wanna end negotiations sooner than later. And the only reason I say that is, if there is an agreement to negotiate, it's like plea bargaining in a criminal case, if the trial's on the 30th of the month, it's gonna get resolved on the 29th. So it's gonna take time then to draft it and go back and forth, and there's a lot of terms in this original franchise that I think need to be looked at. And I wanna do that, and, we have use and maintenance agreements that I've done in the past, but, so I would say, if the 15th is the date, I wouldn't go any longer than the 17th, which is exactly 4 weeks prior to the 15th. That would
So
be my-
April 17th, you're saying?
17th.
I'm sorry, April 17th.
Negotiations until April 17th.
Yep.
With a notice of May 15th. Is that correct?
Final vacation by middle May.
You want to make a motion on that action? You're starting to,
No, I was just gonna say,
Frame
do
it-
we, do
frame
we
it,
even
but-
have any room for negotiations? We've kind of had the consensus on the table here that our last and final offer is our last and final offer. So, what are we negotiating?
time at this point.
Yeah, time.
Well, it does provide an opportunity maybe to be more creative, I know we've had time.
If they come back with another offer that sheds new light on the situation.
Right. Right. Jeff, what do you think?
I don't see us having any other choice at this point.
So are you good with the negotiations up until the 17th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Then I'll make that motion to, begin these proceedings.
The
I'll
motion's
second.
to send a letter,
Option two.
outlining option two.
Yeah.
With those dates.
With those dates.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Jeff? Sue? Any further questions or discussion? All right. Do you care for a roll? Okay, we'll do a vote by roll.
Ulrich? Yes.
Sulla?
Yes.
Malcolm?
Yes.
Moyer?
Yes.
Woodley?
Yes.
Friedmeier?
Yes.
Mayor Duran? Yes. Great. Okay, and then we have the city administrator's summary evaluation. So on March 5th of 2019, City Council held a closed meeting in our regular meeting to evaluate the performance of Chad Springer, who's our city administrator. In accordance with the governing law at the city council meeting, which is the next open city council, which is tonight, next meeting following that March 5th meeting, the city is required to summarize the conclusions of the evaluation of the performance of Mr. Springer reached by city council at that March 5th closed meeting. So the conclusions were that Mr. Springer did not request that such a meeting be open to the public, which is his right. As a result, the evaluation of Mr. Springer's performance took place in a closed meeting as provided by the Minnesota Open Meeting Law. As mayor of the city of Wabasha, I'll now provide a summary of the conclusions reached by the city council from the March 5th closed meeting regarding the performance of evaluation of Mr. Springer. Mr. Springer was evaluated highly for his consistent and effective communication with department heads and the ability to incorporate feedback of city staff into collaborative planning and problem solving. All departments cited the importance of Mr. Springer's financial acumen in assisting with effective budget development and financial management. On multiple issues of significance to the city, Mr. Springer was found to have effectively negotiated on complex matters involving regional and community stakeholders, as well as state and federal agencies. And the council is very appreciative of Mr. Springer's service to the city of Wabasha and the broader community, and the Personnel Committee appreciates the willing involvement of all of our departments in conducting this performance evaluation. And we would otherwise move to the donations, but we don't have them to acknowledge properly, so we'll move those to May. We would not want to accept any donations without proper acknowledgement, so hold tight on those. And then we need acknowledgement that financials emailed to council were received. That came from Patty this week, I believe. Getting those? All right.
Do we need a motion
Yeah.
for his eval?
We don't.
Okay.
We don't, it says so in the paper.
Yeah.
We talked, I called the mayor today.
Okay,
that's-
perfect.
Excellent.
No, it's just the summary of our conclusive
Oh.
comments in their closed meeting.
It's just
All right.
to make sure you read it.
Yeah. I like that. Right?
Well, good work. It happened.
Good catch, Jeff.
All right, and we can, without any further,
I move to adjourn.
Second.
very good, we have a motion from Walrick and a second from Friedmeier. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We can adjourn at 8:08. Thank you very much.
I pulled some things from this agenda. I thought it was.